Good morning. Welcome to MA second year, fourth semester, paper number 16 and unit number 4, that is lesson number 4 in block number 2. Last Saturday and last Sunday, we have dealt with 3 units, 2 from block 1 and 1 from block. Today, let us discuss about history of Indian public relations together with the objective of the lesson and the public relations, how it was in mythological period, and about sage Narada, the stages of propaganda, like Buddhism and techniques of propaganda. I told you, propaganda is always associated with religion, war, and politics. And about Emperor Ashoka, he is considered as father of public information. And then Mughal rule, and during that period, how the information was exchanged, what was the situation of newsletter system and public communication system. And then coming to the modern period is about Raja Ram Mohan Rai, the social reformer of the age, and it was called as social communication. From public information to social communication. During the period of Emperor Ashoka, we called it as public information. And it is identified during Raja Ram Mohan Rai period because as the social reformer, he adopted to social communication, that is communication with the society for reforming the society, to remove any difficulties in the society, and then bringing in reforms. And then the era of publicity came during the British India and even during the company, East India Company, and also the Crown together, the Crown rule and the company rule and the Crown rule together for 200 years. We call it as British India because India was one of the dominions of British from east to west. So during the First World War, how the publicity boards were established, and during the Second War, in sorry for interruption. Then let us also discuss about Gandhian era of public communication. Gandhi returned from South Africa, leaving his legal practice to join the freedom movement, and he himself led the freedom movement for the freedom. And then independent India, the age of public relations, how Ministry of Information and Broadcasting came into being, and what is about the industrial policies about 1948, 1956, and also the major, the landmark, the important new industrial policy that was adopted by India in the year 1991 in the context of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Let us go into the lesson. See, the objectives of the lesson is to point out public relations in mythology, including that of sage Narada. These communicators are called Hori communicators because today we are talking about principles of communication. In those days, the principles are not important, but the idea of communication was important. Then this lesson will explain the state of propaganda during Lord Buddha period, and you will gain an understanding of Raja Ram Mohan Rai's social communication. And we will also be, this lesson will also be expounding the era of publicity, that is called publicity era during British rule in India, both the First World War and Second World War, and the age of public relations in independent India, and then specifically new industrial policy of 1991, which brought public relations to the more limelight than it was in the year 1958 or 1948 or 47 when we attained independence. During the course of history, public relations in India evolved in a slow but steady manner, starting with mythological and celestial public relations. Narada is said to be the mythological Muni and an ambassador, a communicator par excellence. And he also practiced public relations for the welfare and the happiness of the public at large. He may be giving some misgivings, purposefully spreading some rumors, but the ultimate aim was for the welfare and happiness of the public at large. And he is the father, the ancient father, the celestial father of public relations practice. And the epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata, how the public information and public communication has been practiced, how it was available in those days, and the gradual evolution of public relations as a science, as an art in India, can be divided into five models. These are the five models. Model one is state of propaganda, and the other one is era of publicity, and then Gandhian era of publication, Gandhian era of communication, and then the age of public relations. Now, the Indian PR, global perspective. Now we have gone global. Every country has become global. The technology has networked the entire globe into a village. What happens now will be sent across, will be communicated, will be disseminated across to the last point of the world. So therefore, the communication evolution has made it possible to communicate at such a great speed. All our religious teachers, from Gautam Buddha to Shankaracharya and from Guru Nanak to Kabir, communicated in a language which is important, which is common people found easy to understand. If I speak in Italian, if I speak in Greek, if I speak in Sanskrit, which is not the language of the common people, it will not get into the mind. It becomes a barrier. So language is a barrier of communication. There are several barriers of communication which prevent the communication from reaching the targeted audience, from the communicator to the communicatee, from the sender to the receiver, from the speaker to the listener. So the certain barriers are there. Those barriers, I think I have already touched upon. We have already read about barriers of communication. Now, language as a major barrier of communication. If I don't know a particular language, whatever is told to me, I may not receive, I may not understand, I may not retain, I may not repeat. So for everything, there is selective perception, selective reception, and selective reproduction, for which language plays an important role. Language as a medium of communication is very important. So therefore, these religious leaders spoke in their native languages. You just think of our Chief Minister of Telangana state. He speaks in the same language that belongs to the people, in the same slang that people talk to. So that is one of the techniques, tools of communicating with the common people. So they are all master communicators. These people, like Buddha, Shankaracharya, Guru Nanak, Kabir, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, even Gandhi, they are all masters of communication. They are master communicators. Some are hoary communicators, some are refined communicators. Another outstanding example of master communicator is, as I told you, is none other than the leader of the freedom movement, Mahatma Gandhi, who succeeded in bringing the entire country together to achieve independence. All of them, all these leaders which you have named, have succeeded in they preached in a language which was understood by the masses with a view to changing their mindset in a particular direction. In a democracy like India, what is the population, what is the size of India, you'll agree that popular support is required for the government to exist. Mine here, popular does not mean famous. Popular means belongs to the population, belongs to the people. So popular information means public information belongs to the public. It is not a famous public. Popular government is as against the kingdoms. Popular government is as against the military governments. So James Madison, the fourth president of America, USA, said, a popular government without popular information is a farce or a prologue or a tragedy or both or many, whatever it is. So that is the importance of public information and public communication. So during the First World War that happened in 1914 and 1918, the government of India set up a publicity board, and that was the first organized PR, public relations or information setup as such the government of India resorted to. Thereafter, the publicity board, central publicity board or publicity boards at the other regional levels, renamed as Central Bureau of Information, CBO, CBI, Central Bureau of. Later, it was renamed as Public Information Bureau, PIB, and functioned as a link between the government and the press. Whatever is reported in the press, it is taken as a feedback and reported to the government. And whatever government information is there, it is disseminated to the general public through the press. So that was the work of the either you call it Central Publicity Board earlier, and with its state level branches or regional branches or publicity boards. Thereafter, it has been renamed as Central Bureau of Information, and later on it is Public Information Bureau. So the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting employs professionals to look after the function of informing, educating, entertaining. These are the very basic functions of communication. These are the very basic functions of any medium of communication, and these are the functions of public relations practitioners. Let me repeat these things: informing, educating, and entertaining. Just take, for example, the role of Doordarshan, the role of All India Radio. It informs, it educates, it entertains. Of course, several other functions have come to stay these days, but these are the three basic functions of any medium, and these are the very functions of communication, and these are the objectives and functions of any public relations practitioners. So, having gone through the introduction, let us go one by one. What sage Narada did. He was a great writer and author of several standard texts, including Narada Smriti. Narada is believed to be the first journalist and first communicator and first public relations practitioner in human history according to the documents available to us. Known as a walking monk, he walks from this world to that world with or without visa because he doesn't require any kind of visa or passport. This moment he will be here in Golok, and in the next moment he will be in Sargalok, and thereafter another moment he will land up in Narakalok, advising the kings, advising the gods and goddesses, all for the whatever be the number of the lokas, we don't know, but Narada used to cultivate disputes. He and sometimes concocted information, disinformation also purposefully among the gods and the demigods and others with his communication practices. And also he offers them solutions for the welfare and happiness of the people or gods, goddesses, demigods at large. Sage Narada, the first public relations personality, is said to be who figured in both Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana happened in one particular age and followed by the period of Mahabharata. These two epic periods, he would disseminate information between the gods and goddesses and the rulers and the ruled, and also rulers and the ruled, with the motive of establishing Loka Kalyanam, universal peace and prosperity. Mahabharata explains Narada's qualifications and experience in vivid detail. He was conversant with the Vedas. He was conversant with the Upanishads and was acquainted with history and Puranas of his age and previously. Therefore, even public relations practitioners are supposed to be jock of all and master of many, just like Sage Narada. Sage Narada was conversant with Vedas and Upanishads and every other document. He had thorough knowledge of 6 angas: pronunciation. He was clear in his pronunciation. He knows the grammar, the prosody, explanation of basic terms, description of religious rites, and even astronomy. All celestial beings worshipped him for his knowledge because knowledge is power. Information is gathering information is knowledge. Knowledge is power. He is supposed to be well versed in all that occurred in ancient kalpas, time cycles, and is termed to be conversant with nyaya, the logic, and the truth of moral science. He knew the science of morals, politics, skilled in drawing inferences from evidence, and very proficient in distinguishing inferior things from superior ones. He was the master of Sankhya and yoga systems of philosophy, conversant with the sciences of war and treaty, and proficient in drawing conclusions of judging things. He knew about the six sciences of treaty, war, military campaigns, maintenance of force against the enemy, and strategies of ambushes and reserves. He was a thorough master of every branch of learning. Therefore, the modern public relations officer is also supposed to be master, jack of all and master of at least many, several things. Then comes the stage of propaganda, the age of Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha is considered as the light of Asia because he got enlightenment and he enlightened many on lifestyles. PR in India grew out of propaganda. Yes, because the origin of public relations is either propaganda or the press agentry. In West, it is called press agentry. The origin of PR is said to be press agentry in Western the hemisphere of the world, and in India, propaganda. India and certain other Asian countries, propaganda is said to be the origin of the practice of public relations, both in ancient and medieval India. An atmosphere feature in the stage of propaganda that was the religious leaders like Mahavira, the religion or politics or war adopts propaganda because propaganda does not have any ethics, any values. There need not be any truth. Anything repeatedly told is believed by the people that is the technique. Similarly, the kings in ancient India, like Emperor Ashoka and Mughals in medieval India, made all-out efforts to preserve their rule by adopting the propaganda techniques. Now, come to Buddhism techniques and propaganda. In the propaganda model of PR communication, the purpose is to promote an ideology or the rule among the public with motives. Gautam Buddha belongs to this category because he is also a religious leader. He founded Buddhism and the he propagated the his own religion. Buddha set forth the four noble truths. That is, one, life is full of dukkha, pain. Pain is caused by constant craving for sensual pleasures and material gains. Number three, agony will cease when a person is free from desires. Detachment, so to say, he preached and practiced detachment, eightfold path for the cessation of pain. That is, right path, right endeavor, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right action, right thinking, right meditation. These are all the uh, eightfold path is said to be the principles of Buddhism. Buddhists, who were the very first propagators of religion, spread their faith by traveling all over the world. Of course, Jainism also took birth in India, but founded by Jain Mahavira. But Jainism confined only to India, but Buddhism crossed the borders of the Indian country and even to the other continents. So the awakening of the Buddha, uh, the Gautama, even he sent across his children, his daughter and son, to the neighboring countries for propagating uh, Buddhism. So what we wanted to see in propagation is how the information, the present day public relations evolved from all these things. What was the concept of information or what was the concept of communication in those days and what is the concept of communication and information in the welfare states? The majority of the countries in the world are of welfare nature, democratic people, not police states, welfare states, and of democratic nature, majority. Very few countries are still communist and princely countries. Otherwise, all other countries have adopted to democracy. Of the people, by the people, and for the people with little differences. Democracies also are of many kinds. But come back to the technique of Buddhist propaganda. it was through parables. Parables means a short stories. Pittakatham. To make people understand, even Jesus Christ adopted parables. To make people understand the philosophy of Buddha, he told them stories to explain the glory of Dharma. If common people could not understand the truth in the abstract arguments are only jargonic arguments, very limited information is given, which ordinary people will not understand. If I let me explain what is abstract and what is detailed. Supposing some drawings are there, only lines can be seen in that. Leonardo da Vinci, some kind of people, they drew the abstract pictures, which common people cannot understand. But meaning has to be given, it has to be explained. But a detailed picture drawn by Ravi Verma of Kerala. So every detail is seen there, including the moods. But in abstract pictures, in abstract statements, only the, the knowledgeable people will understand, not all the common people. So Buddha explained his theory, Buddha explained his eight path living through through explaining the parables. A bhikshu or bhikkhu is called as a fully ordained male Buddhist monast. Monastics means in our language, Hindu language. In Hinduism, they are called munis. In their Buddhism, they are called bhikshus or bhikkhus. The holy orders of Buddhism connect back to the central roots of Buddhism, the original followers of Buddha. So we all know that who is Buddha. Buddha was once Prince Siddhartha, but he got detached after seeing certain sad incidents of the life as he was the prince. Thereafter, he renounced his life, left his wife, left his son, and left the kingdom to uh, the dynasty. And then he went on roaming and preaching Buddhism about the God and the right path, detachment, how the difficulties will come, how the people suffer, why the people suffer at all. On these things he found out, and he found a solution for the happy living without any attachments, but by detaching every desire, every want. Come to Emperor Ashoka. He is also considered as the father of public information. King Ashoka, the third monarch of Indian Mauryan dynasty, first ancient king who introduced public information, has come to be regarded as one of the most exemplary rulers in world history because of his Dharmachakra, pillar edicts, and all this. British historian H.G. Wells has written like this. Amidst the tens of thousands of names of monarchs that crowd the columns of history, the name of Ashoka shines better and shines almost alone and shines like a star. It means how important was Buddha in making people informed through his edicts, rock edicts, and pillar edicts. Then the 19th century, there came a large number of edicts in India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. These edicts inscribed on rocks and pillars proclaim Ashoka's reforms and policies and promulgate his advice to his subjects. Everything communicates. A written paper communicates, a notes communicates, a photo communicates, a passage communicates, poetry communicates. Here, the rock edicts inscribed on rocks and pillars of Ashoka's reforms and policies will tell people what has happened during his regime, what was the public information, whatever he wanted to communicate to the people, tell the people, ordinary people, that has been inscribed on the rocks and pillars. The present rendering of these edicts, based on earlier translations, offers us insight into a powerful and capable ruler's attempt to establish an empire on the foundation of righteousness, not crookedness, righteousness. A reign which makes the moral and spiritual welfare of the subjects means the ruler and the ruled of his subjects, its primary concern. Ashoka's edicts are mainly concerned with the reforms he instituted and the moral principles he recommended in his attempt to create a just and humane society. As such, they gave us little information about his life, the details of which have to be culled out from other sources. By and large, Ashoka's edicts are to be found scattered in more than 30 places throughout India and even in Nepal, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, Sri Lanka also. Most of them are written in Brahmi script because that was the script adopted, from which all Indian scripts and many of those used in Southeast Asia later developed. The language used in the edicts found in the eastern part of the subcontinent is a type of Magadhi, probably the official language of Ashoka's court. The language used in the edicts found in the western part of India is closer to Sanskrit, although one bilingual edict of Afghanistan is written in Aramaic language. That Aramaic language and Greek or Central Asian languages. Ashoka edicts, which comprise the earliest decipherable corpus of written documents from India, have survived throughout the centuries because they are written on rocks and stone pillars. So then, what are the teachings of the monks? It is very clear that Buddhism was the most influential force in Ashoka's life, and he hoped his subjects likewise would adopt his religion. The message was spread through the teachings of the monks, the disciples, Sishyas. Then contents of Ashoka's edicts make it clear that all the legends about his wise and humane rule are more than justified and qualify him to be ranked as one of the greatest rulers. In his edicts, he spoke of what might be called state morality and private and individual morality. The first was that he based his administration upon, and he was hoped to lead to a more just, more spiritually inclined society, while the second was that he recommended and encouraged individuals to practice. Both these types of morality were imbued with the Buddhist values and compassion, moderation. All this was about how Buddha and his disciples, that are monks, propagated their religion. Propagation of religion requires a kind of information, a kind of technique to tell to the people to adopt this particular religion. That itself is communicating with the people. How he communicated through parables, through disciples, through his children, through rock edicts, through pillar edicts, and all these things. This is what we wanted to understand and why we should study about the Buddha. The edicts of Ashoka are a collection of 33 inscriptions on the pillars of Ashoka, as well as boulders and cave walls made of Emperor Ashoka of the Mauryan Empire during his reign from 269 BC to 232 BC. So this is all about how Buddha edicted. They are to be, if they are to be divided into, they are pillar edicts, major rock edicts, and major rock inscriptions. These inscriptions proclaim Ashoka's adherence to the Buddhism philosophy. We are not dealing with religion. We are not focusing on the religion, but we are focusing on how the religion has been propagated. That is called one kind of propaganda, religious propaganda. And from propaganda, we extract our practice of public relations. And public relations practice is the practice is important because it has to disseminate some kind of information from the source to the destination, from the communicator to the communicatee, from the sender to the receiver. And similarly, we have to gather the feedback or reaction or response. So this is the duty of the public relations. We have to trace from the religious propagations. Then let us also look at Mughal rule and their public information system, especially the news letters. The great Mughal emperors uh, like Baba, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. These are all important. Others are also there. That was the period between 1526 to 1707 AD. After that, this period saw the communication flourishing. So because they adopted certain novel ideas of how to communicate with the people. The Mughals appointed three categories of writers known as Wakia Navis. Wakia Navis means he is a public news writer. He writes news on behalf of the king, emperor, and also the major public events and also the needs and wants of the general public. And another kind of news writers appointed by the Mughals were Kufiya Navis. It means secret news writers, detectives. They write only certain things, but they are not made public, but they are communicated in secrecy to the king and the ruler or the concerned, and from there and through them it will reach the emperor in order to perceive, in order to understand what are the people's perceptions, what the people are thinking, what are the needs of the people, and how the neighboring kingdoms are reacting, whether there is any threat or any security is beefed up. All these things will be written by Kufiya Navis, that is called secret news writers. Secret information is obtained through them. And then there is another category called Harkara. These harkaras are oral informers, like drum beaters, like pronouncers in the village, tom-tom makers. They go into the villages, they go into the wars, they go into the habitations, they go even into the tribal areas, wherever people live, and then pronounce or make public the ideology, the good deeds, or any other information pertaining to the state or the nation or the kingdom. So Wakia Navis was the newsletter writer and was intended for informing the government about day-to-day happenings in different regions. So information to and fro from the government to the people and from people to the government. This is the public information they will write and people will come to understand about it. This method of conveying information improved considerably during Mughal rule. In addition to this, trained carrier pigeons, horse riders, tunnel runners, and drummers were also used in fort to fort and from post to post communication for transmitting distress or emergency messages. Today we have communication systems. Today we have information technology, ITC and ICT. In those days, it is only through humans or sometimes birds and animals and runners. They are called couriers. They used to run in case of distress and any emergency for miles together and then pass on information. And from there, another courier will run to another post. That way, the communication is delayed, but with a perfect manner. Of course, communication distortion will be there because whether it is humans or animals or birds of sky, there is uh, there is always a possibility of communication distortion. You will come to know about what is communication distortion during the course of your study, either in this paper or in the other papers. The style of drum beating conveyed whether someone was born or dead. Marriage drum beating had its own style. Even today, we know drum beats indicate several things. A marriage beat will be different, a celebration beat will be different, and then a festival beat will be different. All different kinds of drum beats are adopted for different occasions. Another important thing of public communication or public information perception and dissemination or perception was the system of Jaroka Darshan. Jaroka means window. The emperor will sit at the window and will give audience to the public on an appointed day and time. The emperor used to sit there. People come in line and express their grievances and get them solved. Then bell of justice. Bell of justice, Jahangir, the son of Emperor Akbar, had introduced another innovative communication system called bell of justice. Anybody suffered, anybody has any grievance, will come to the fort and there uh, uh, is hung a huge bell of justice. If that is rung, somebody will come and attend, and the problem is solved. Let us come down to the age of Raja Ram Mohan Rai in the early 19th century. Raja Ram Mohan Rai, the father of Indian language journalism. James Augustine Hickey, the Calcutta Gazette, is the first journal in India. Bengal Gazette is called. It was called James Augustine Hickey. Hickey Gazette also it is called. It has four names. It was started in 17 immediately, I think, in the early 18th century. after the advent of printing machine. John Gutenberg invented printing machine. After that, in India for the first time, James Augustine Hickey, Bengal Gazette or Calcutta Gazette, though he was a military officer of British Company, East India Company, he raised his voice against the atrocities of the East India Company and started talking in favor of Indian public and their problems. So after him, in 1821, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, the social reformer, had started Sambad Kaumidi, a Bengali weekly in 1821, and Mirat ul Akbar, a Persian weekly in 1821, Brahman Sevadi, an English and Bengali bilingual magazine in 1821. Through his publications, he mobilized the public opinion against the practice of sati, that was very important, burning of Hindu widow with the dead husband. Sati Sahagamanam. Sahagamanam. Going up, going to Swarga or Narak along with the husband. If husband is dead, his wife will also offer herself on the flames of her husband. So funeral pyre. దహనం దహనం చేసేటప్పుడు ఈవిడ కూడా ఆ దహనంలో ఆ మంటలో పడి ఆత్మని అర్పించేసుకుని సతి కూడా పతితో పాటు వెళ్ళిపోయేదాన్ని సతీ సహగమనం అనేవారు. దట్ వాజ్ ఎ బ్యాడ్ ప్రాక్టీస్. And only through the writings of Raja Ram Mohan Rai, the social reformer, that has been abolished by the government in the year 1829. Any movement, any public movement, any revolt or any revolution, you know the difference between, you should know the difference between revolt and revolution. A failed revolution is called revolt. A successful revolution is called revolution. So that was a revolution. Sipai's mutiny was a revolt because it was failed. The Indian freedom movement was a revolution because that succeeded. His journals, whose journals? Raja Ram Mohan Rai's journals, enlightened people on social evils and thus became known as the father of social communication in India. He extensively studied Christianity and other religions and found out the deficiencies within Hinduism. When there is no such practice in Hinduism and other religions, why it should be there in Hinduism only? Maybe in those days it may be a good practice, but in the modern days it appears very barbaric. A woman alive, if she is not willing also, she is thrown into the flames, into the funeral pyre of her husband. That is none other. It is not only a suicide, but sometimes it appears to be a murder. Today, even suicide is a crime. You cannot commit suicide because the life is not yours. It belongs to the family members. It belongs to the society as well. It belongs to the country and nation also. Therefore, that has been abolished in 1829 because of the efforts, because of the communication that has been spread by the social reformer Raja Ram Mohan Rai and mobilized the opinion of the people at large. And that mobilization of opinion led to the abolition of Sati Sahagamanam. There is a saying there is a good saying that today's public opinion is tomorrow's legislation. Legislation means making laws. Today's public opinion will become tomorrow's legislation. Therefore, till then, Sati Sahagamanam was an acceptable practice, an acceptable tradition. But the public opinion has been changed by the social reformer Raja Ram Mohan Rai. So people started talking about it. People wanted that it should be abolished because it is a barbaric one. Throwing a wife into the flames, to the dead flames of the husband, is nothing but a murder. Even if she is willing, it is barbaric. It becomes a suicidal attempt or suicide itself, committing suicide. Taking the life by committing the suicide is also not good, doesn't look nice. Therefore, people wanted it to be abolished. So it culminated into abolition of that kind of practice by bringing in a law, a legislation, a statute, an act. Therefore, this adage is very suitable. Today's public opinion is tomorrow's legislation. Similarly, child marriage. Child marriage was in vogue Why we are talking all these things of the happenings in the history? It is only what we wanted to see is the information and the communication, how information becomes knowledge, how the communication, how, how powerful is the communication to influence the rulers and influence the policy makers. This is what we should understand. So the purpose of public relations is to motivate, first to communicate, to motivate and persuade people, not only general public and also the rulers. In public affairs, it is more at ruling level, at decision taking level. In lobbying, also the same thing practice. But certain things do not have ethics and morals and principles. But public relations, as such, as a profession, is based on truth, facts, morals, values, ethics, and principles. Therefore, public relations, as it was in the olden age, just as a press agency or a propaganda, just as a tool of publicity, now it has some values inbuilt into it. It is a responsible practice. So the title Raja was given to him, whom to Raja Ram Mohan Rai, by the Mughal emperor himself. Raja Ram Mohan Rai was the first educated Indian to travel to England. He went to England as an ambassador. Extremely sorry, whenever your phone comes, gets disturbed. Sorry for that. Uh, he went to England as an ambassador of the Mughal Emperor Akbar II. He wanted to combine the righteousness and all good things of Western and Indian culture. He was against traditional Hindu practices and echoed his voice against sati system, polygamy, polygamy and polyandry. Polygamy is many wives, one man marrying many wives, more than one, and polyandry is one woman marrying more than one husband. Of course, polyandry was not there elsewhere except in Nepal area, where we can see Mahabharata was based on polyandry. One wife got married to many husbands. So polygamy was uniformly there everywhere in India, barring Nepal and other areas. And caste rigidity and child marriage. Balya vivaham, vitantu vivaham, కుల వివక్ష ఇటువంటివన్నీ కూడా ఉండేవన్నమాట. He was greatly moved by his sister-in-law's death by observing such. That has triggered his movement. So his sister-in-law, brother's wife, when his brother died, his sister-in-law was thrown into the flames of the funeral pyre. That moved him to take up the cause to abolish sati and also child marriage, the widow marriage, and all these things. Widow marriage was a bane in those days, but in these days, widows can be remarried because that is life. For no fault of her, the husband dies, and if that is the case, the rest of the life she has to live alone. She becomes a prey for other people in the society. So, in order to avoid these things, a woman is to be protected by remarrying her to another man. So, Raja Ram Mohan Rai established many schools also so that education gives the people knowledge and knowledge leads to empowerment. He set up a Hindu college at Calcutta in 1822 after establishing three papers. As I told you, Sambad Kaumudi, and other things. By creating public opinion against this evil system of sati, Raja Ram Mohan Rai got abolished such a cruel system through the then Governor General of East India Company. So, company Governor Generals were there. Later, under the Crown, Viceroys came into the system of Viceroy. Then, let us look into the era of publicity during the British India. The second stage in the growth of Indian public relations is the era of publicity. Publicity is the giving out of information about a product, person, or a company for advertising or promotional purposes. Placing information in a medium of communication to attract the public's attention is also called publicity. You should know the difference between public relations, publicity, advertising, propaganda, public affairs, lobbying. These are all sound the same thing, but the only difference is public relations is a refined practice of science and art. Though it has got the origin from all those things, now it is an ethical practice. And now public relations has become an umbrella term for practicing all kinds of things. Of course, under public relations, if you study public relations, you'll also be studying about the publicity. You'll also be studying about the advertising and all these things, other practices like propaganda, lobbying, and public affairs. Gradually, uh, as the British government took charge from the East India Company, public information got a shot in the arm and information flow commenced. So public information is to be given to the public. There must be a flow of information, free flow of information. Therefore, we always call freedom of press, freedom of press. Freedom of press is derived from the human right that is called Article 19(1)(a), freedom of speech and expression. So there is no separate right for the medium in the Constitution. The 19(1)(a), Article 19(1)(a) is a fundamental right that empowers every individual, including media, including journalists, even public relations, a common citizen, to freely express, to freely speak and express his opinion. Media is an extension of human free speech. The British no longer viewed India as a trade zone, but East India Company considered India as a dominion and a market and a source of raw material. But of, they too got refined over a period of time, and the British government started viewing India not just as a trade zone, but also took the locals into confidence in their counselings, in their roundtables. They started inviting Indian leaders to participate and give their ideas and opinions how India can be ruled, what are the wants of the people, and what can be done by the ruling government, that is British India. The Viceroy, Governor General's gone with the East India Company. With the advent of a crown into place to rule, then Viceroys came. The then Viceroy, made sure that journalists receive official information regularly about the government and the governments. Viceroy Lord Canning first founded Editor's Room in 1858, immediately after Sipai's mutiny. That was a revolt, a failed revolution. So because of that, an editor's room was established in Kolkata in 1858, immediately after Sipai's mutiny, wherein journalists go there regularly, sit there and see the notice boards and also the papers placed there by the government, and they get to know about and talk something more about it. And if necessary, they used to talk to the officials concerned for clarification. And then those journalists belonging to different newspapers, they used to report the information, and that will go to the public. That becomes a public information. The information that is held by the government and the rulers is disseminated through the journalist via editor's room that was established in 1858. Few official papers were printed and pasted on notice boards, while others were included in the local gazette. Such steps promoted goodwill. So, what was the result? That resulted in the goodwill between the government and the press. Press is a free press. Of course, we have several constraints, and restrictions on the press. Earlier, it was supposed to be, even today, it is supposed to be a free press, but there are a lot of restrictions. Editorials are called advertorials. Editorials are called advertorials, or sometimes they are also called proprietorials, because the editorial is not being written with freehand by the editor, because it always there are instructions from the proprietor. Therefore, it is called proprietorial. And then some editorials are written keeping the revenue of the newspaper in mind. Therefore, they are called advertorials. News items, commercial news items. And now you see the media is called paid, sold media. because it is sold to somebody, sold to some pressure, or sold to some money. Media these days is also called polarized media. Polar, North Pole, South Pole. Some people, some newspapers take to go to the north, some people go to the south. Not, it doesn't mean north and south, North India, South India, but across. They are divided between the political parties. That is called polarization of media. Sold media that is sold to some political party, polarized media. And fettered media, because the handcuffs and fetters are uh, put onto the media so that they cannot uh, express freely. Even if a journalist reports to the editor or sub-editing that this is the fact, that will be altered or that will be killed. You know what is killing of the news? Killing of the news means it is not allowed to go into the newspaper or the channel. So these are all the things you are aware, because majority of you are already journalists. Only a few of you must be new to the subject. Lord Lawrence in 1864, he has revived the idea of starting a newspaper for publicity purpose, but somehow the idea was dropped later. In 1876, Viceroy Lord Lytton, very important, wanted to better relations with the media, and he appointed, mind it, Robert Knight as a consultant to the government for matters relating to the Lord Lytton Viceroy and Robert Knight, a consultant to the government for matters relating to the press. So he was appointed as a consultant and was asked to sit in the editor's room that was established in 1858, immediately after Sipai's mutiny in 1857. He suggested the establishment of a press bureau for developing a rapport with newspapers. The government later appointed the first press commissioner in 1780, first press commissioner. This marked the beginning of government's publicity, which later became a tool of public relations. Press agentry, propaganda. These two are the origins of the present day public relations. Public relations is two-way. Public relations is presentation of truth and facts, whereas propaganda and publicity is one way. It is not a two-way traffic. Only one intention, the information to be given to the people. Do not bother about their reaction. Do not bother about their response. Do not bother about their opinion. Do not bother about feedback unless warranted. So otherwise, the purpose is to give only forward, feed forward, not the feedback. Let us also look at First World War and how the publicity boards were established during that period. Government of India, initially, it was reluctant to have a regular official publicity setup to deal with the public, but realized its importance during the First World War, 1914-1918. Why they wanted to inform the public about government information? Because they want revenue to support, to buy arms and ammunition, to strengthen the government by way of taxes, by way of any other payments to the government, rates, rents, taxes, and all these things. Whatever revenue comes to the government, that is comes from the people only. Government cannot mint as such as it is. There is a system of currency. So they wanted to inform the public, seek the sympathy that we are defending our boundaries for the welfare and good of people, and so that there is no external threat. So pay us the taxes in time, pay us taxes more, so that we defend our boundaries. We wage war on our enemies. That was the importance the governments realized during the First World War. Extensive propaganda and war publicity were required to secure greater response and support for the war efforts. Underline this, support the war efforts, both from newspapers and the general public. The government therefore set up a number of provincial publicity boards throughout the country, with a central publicity board in Shimla. So first time in Shimla, the central publicity board that has become public information, PIB, Public Information Bureau of today. The Shimla was the first headquarters of publicity board for the entire India. Why Shimla? Because the people, the Britishers, British rulers, also our North Indian rulers, Shimla they like because that is a peaceful place. They used to sit and discussed there. Shimla Pact, you might have heard. Shimla Roundtable, you might have heard. That was once the headquarters uh, of the Britishers, because Calcutta and Delhi used to be extreme temperatures. So the government therefore set up a number of provincial publicity boards throughout the country, of course, with the headquarters being Shimla. The central publicity was remained in Shimla until it was shifted to Delhi. This could be perhaps called as the first organized public information dissemination agency established in 1914, that is at the beginning of the First World War, as part of the propaganda. Again, war. So far, we heard about religion. So, religious propaganda we covered. Now, the war. It is war propaganda. So, war propaganda, in propaganda, there may be less truth and more of lies. Uttering lies repeatedly, make them believe that it is true, and then gain from it. So, this is called propaganda. Then, publicity boards developed cordial relations with the journalists who were until then looked upon as anti government. So, earlier to that, journalists were looked as anti-government because they exposed the governmental deeds and misdeeds and inactivity of the government. But with the advent of the First World War, government government wanted to get close to the newspapers, news editors, journalists, journalist society, and the media world, and then get the information passed through them to the general public. Tours were organized for journalists to battlefields also, to get them know that our people are fighting, defending our boundaries, and then are dying. So seeking sympathy by showing all these things to journalists. Journalists come back and write, our sipais are fighting like this, they are dying like this, our tanks and weaponry requires this much of this information. And seeing these news items, people will come forward, not only paying the taxes in time, paying more and offering donations also. The duty of the Bureau was to extract the most critical statements which appeared in newspapers and bring them to the notice of the departments for comments and rejoinders. Then after the World War from 1914 to 1918, 4 years, 5 years, then the Second World War broke. That was in 1939. 1939, uh, in which India was involved. India was on the ally side, whereas Germany was on the enemy side. Germany, Japan, and certain other countries. America, India, and USSR were on the ally side. So Berlin was attacked by Russian army forces uh, and took over and defeated the German regime, that is Hitler. So in 1939, when the Second World War broke, where India was on the ally side, the fighter's side, not on the opposition, Japan suffered a lot because they took the side of Hitler. For war propaganda, Government of India improved the structure of the publicity machinery, which was fully utilized after India's independence. The Bureau of Public Information and the All India Radio were placed under a new organization called the Directorate of Information and Broadcasting. Later it became Ministry of INB, Information and Broadcasting, for better coordination and effective war publicity. Doordarshan came in 1959, but All India Radio came 2 years later, the British Broadcasting Corporation. All India Radio was the first, it was called IBC. So BBC maybe in 1924, just 2 years later, 1926, BBC came into force. But by then, newspapers were already there, established by James Augustine Hickey, Rajaram Mohan Rai, and all other people everywhere. That was the scenario of media of communication. The Bureau of Public Information and All India Radio were placed under the Directorate of Information and Broadcasting. In the history of Indian information system, the year 1941, government used the word public relations for the first time. Public relations for the first time was used in the year 1941 in India. But in 1889, it was used by the British, by the Then American president, in his speech to the US Assembly, 1889, America, for the first time, they used public relations. But in our country, in the year 1941, for the first time, the word public relations has been used. The war publicity structure changed its stand from war information to public information. So war was over. War reels were over. When some 30, 35, 40 years ago, before every picture in the theaters, there used to be a 5 minutes war reel. It used to be called a war reel. It is to imbibe the patriotism into the audience about the country. Now that wars are over, no direct wars, all are economic wars and silent cold wars. Now the war reels are over. Now there is no question of war except Janaganamana. And then the war publicity at that point of time from war information, because war was over, Second World War was also over, and they named it public information for the welfare of the people. It is called developmental information, development communication, development information, development communication. Let us also peep into the Gandhian era of public communication. Public communication, communicating with the public is called public communication. Public information, the information that ought to be given to the public is called public information. Mahatma Gandhi was a great apostle of peace, insatiable soul, ever in quest of the truth, fighter for minority rights in South Africa, canny politician, and a social reformer. He was an inspiration to humankind, man of the millennium. In his own way, Gandhi was a consummate artist and an accomplished craftsman, a resolute scientist, and an astute thinker. All in one, Mahatma Gandhi was the leader of the freedom movement. All these were possible by the ability of his art of communication. He is an expert in his own way of communication and his passion for ethical values in journalism. So the origin of Indian public relations that has ethics, values, and morals and principles is only because of Mahatma Gandhi. He thought, he prayed, he traveled, he spoke, he appealed to everyone and everywhere to the conscience of his fellow citizens. He recognized that the communication is the most effective tool to shape opinion and mobilize popular support. He developed his own particular art in order to influence the people. He developed harmony in his art. Gandhi's art of communication is thus quite relevant to the ancient technique of Aristotle's rhetoric. So Aristotle also evolved a model. I told you, I think, in the first lesson itself. Aristotle's model of communication was with the three variables, a linear model of communication. The three variables are speaker, speech, and audience, because he never thought of any kind of modern communication methods like newspapers, radio, or whatever it is. Therefore, he thought the communication, if it has to be given a theoretical frame, it ought to be speaker, speech, and audience. He has not said communicator. He has not sender. He has not said about the sender, because sender and communicator with some technology involved. But the speaker is the very individual himself, physically present, without any medium of communication in between the speaker and the audience. So the first element in his model of communication, that is called a linear model of communication, SSA. Aristotelian model of communication is SSA, speaker, speech, and audience. The speaker will speak, that becomes the speech, and then audience. Audience are not located remotely, but before him, a teacher, a religious leader, speaking to his gathering, right before him, sitting or standing. So they are called audience. The communication is speaker, speech, and audience. But there is no element of reaction or response or feedback, because he thought invariably people, if somebody speaks, they will ask for questions, or also they will also express their uh, dissent or assent through their facial expressions. so that the communicator will alter his communication. Either the communicator, depending upon the mood of the listeners, will either continue or stop it. But he has not given credence or importance to reaction or response or feedback, but because that was the primitive model of communication, the oldest model of communication. But in Gandhian, this thing, it is somewhat improved than Aristotle's rhetorica medium of communication. While explaining the objectives of journalism, Gandhi was a journalist himself because he edited and wrote articles in his Young India and the Harijan and another in Gujarati. Gandhi said three important things and practiced it in his newspapers and even speeches. Why we are all talking about from Narada to Gandhi? It is only to know how they communicated. What were their communications? What was their model of communication? What was public information? What was public communication? So all these things we have to know when you have to fully understand what is public relations, why public relation is called a two-way street of communication or two-way process of communication. One of the objectives of journalism is to understand popular feelings and give expression to them and to expose popular effects. Asking freedom to multicolored Indian society from colonial British rule is a logical fact. To reach this Herculean task, Gandhi adopted Satyagraha, the truth force, a passive resistance, and used Ramarajya, which is Gandhi's equivalent for the English term utopia. Ramarajya. Ramarajya is said to be a peaceful Rajya without any blunders, without any external threats, without any internal disturbance, giving credence even to the common man's word. Is the best example of Rama giving credence to even common man's utterances was a washerman uttered something a drunk washerman uttered something against his wife Sita, and then it came to him through the secret agents, and he said, everybody must be thinking the same way, but only this man has expressed. The public opinion is an underdog. It is not visible to the naked eye. It is just like a floating ice cube, just like a hidden mountain under the sea. So he he gave importance to the public opinion. Therefore, Rama Mahatma Gandhi wanted Ramarajya because the values and principles of living in those days were very high. A, uh, the Mahatma Gandhi's opinion about press in India, in his own words, a free press should be neither an ally nor an adversary, but a constructive critic. That was the saying. That was the saying of Mahatma Gandhi. A free press should be neither an ally nor an advisory to the government. Ally means a friend. Advisory means an enemy to the government. So he wanted that media should not be either a friend or an enemy to the government, but a constructive critic, not a considered vague criticism, a constructive critic, keeping the benefit, keeping the welfare of both sides, both the government and also the public. If he writes, if he criticizes, that should benefit the public. If he writes or criticizes something, that should open the eyes of the government so that they rule better their own people. Satyagraha, as we all know, it is identified with Mahatma Gandhi, none other else in the world. The moment you recollect or think of Mahatma Gandhi, immediately you will come to know about, you will be thinking about Satyagraha. Satyagraha means a non-violent resentment, giving dissent. This is called truthful. By sitting in silence, by sitting in fast, by telling them that this is my resentment, therefore I am not talking, therefore I am not eating. If one man does that, several people followed him, and that becomes a mass movement. The people, the Britishers took this as a very innovative, novel way of resenting things, expression of dissent. Gandhi drew Satyagraha from his deeply held religious and philosophical beliefs, not violence. It is non-violence, which was not exclusively Hindu, but from various other principles also. Because he was telling, I am Hindu, I am a Muslim, I am a Jew, I am a Christian. So it indicates that he took all good things from all religions, leaving aside bad things. He acknowledged his debt not only to Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishad, but to the Sermon of the Mount, that is Bible, and the writings of Tolstoy and Thoreau. Gandhian journalism emerged from the philosophy and values practiced and propagated by Gandhi in his lifetime through the publications, namely Indian Opinion, Young India, Navajivan, and Harijan. These are all the four journals he used to edit and write himself. Indian Opinion and the Young India both were in uh, English. Navajivan was in Gujarati, and Harijan was in Hindi. Gandhi used his four newspapers to propagate his views through persuasion, through discussion, and debate. Gandhi started his journalistic foray in South Africa with the Indian Opinion on 4th June 1903 with Mansukh Lal Nazar as editor. The first issue carried an unsigned editorial, Our Results, that are editorial captioned as Our Results, written by Gandhi, which outlined the policy of the paper. So these are all the things Gandhi adopted. Mahatma Gandhi proved himself as a mass communicator by his strong build of character, reasonable and logical thinking and ability. So therefore, what we should understand is we should have a flair for writing just like a journalist that is in Gandhi. And we should have the character, reasonable and logical thinking and ability to rouse emotions and desirable sentiments, like again Gandhi. Because Gandhi as a public communicator, Gandhi as a journalist, Gandhi as a ethical man. So these qualities we have to adopt. Therefore, Indian public relations are somewhat different from public relations adopted in other countries of the world. Unfortunately, the foundations of Indian press laid by Mahatma Gandhi are receding to the background. So he told how the journalist ought to be. He told how public relations ought to be. So, but people are deviating from the path laid by Mahatma Gandhi. So, the relevance of Mahatma Gandhi to public relations, it was enhanced by certain techniques like influencers. The way Gandhiji used it to work was that he would identify the sarpanch, administrator of the village, or a person that would believe in his actions and start preaching and making him practice the simple ideal way of Gandhi. The same way Buddha trained his monks, his disciples, and sent them across into the society to different places so that they peace preach, so that they peace detachment, so that they preach how to kill the desires and wants. So similar way, Gandhiji also propagated his principles and how it should be adopted by the people. So at that point of time, during the freedom movement, because he being the leader of independent for independence movement for independence, he talked to the sarpanches, the administrative heads of a particular village, so that they being the opinion leaders, they being the information leaders, they being the administrative head of the village, their word will carry a weight. So people listened, and that culminated into a mass movement. That is the power of information through the influences. Using letters to the editor format, Gandhiji would send across letters to various editors of the country, USA, Japan, Germany, everywhere, about the ruling, about the situation, about the practices of India, how the Indians are being treated by dividing them. So he has enlightened the editors of all journals across the world about the Britishers ruling in India in a very balanced manner, not like reporting, not making allegations, but bringing the things into their knowledge. So the Champaran movement, the Kheda Satyagraha, and then Dandi Salt March, everything, all these movements, in all the steering, these movements, these policies, this one non-cooperation and boycott of foreign goods, Dandi Watch, Kheda Satyagraha, and all these things started by Mahatma Gandhi with the help of the other leaders. It roused some kind of curiosity because that has been published in the newspapers across the world. Um, so a kind of momentum he could generate. The march, Sunday March especially, in effect was the spark that ignited the flames of the freedom movement and caused the idea of mass civil disobedience to spread like wildfire across the nation. The Britishers also started taxing on the salt. The salt is just made of seawater. And earlier to Britishers, advent of Britishers, it was everybody's cultivation. Anybody can use it to draw some salt water and then make salt and sell at an affordable price without any governmental tax. But these people, Britishers, in order to extract more money from the public, they wanted to tax and in fact, tax it, imposed a tax on salt along with the price. So this irritated Indian people, and the leader of the movement at that point of time, Gandhi, took to march from Gandhinagar or Porbandar to Dandi. Dandi is a place, a seashore, where salt used to be cultivated. So he went there and he distributed salt to the people free of cost. So this is one way or the other breaking the orders, breaking the instructions imposed by the British India. So these are the movements without any bloodshed, without any righteous kind of thing, without any damaging the property of the government or of the public. He expressed the dissent. He expressed the resentment. He expressed the dislike of the people against the government and government's activities. Before commencing the Dandi March, Gandhiji on March 2nd, 1930, he first addressed a historic letter to the Viceroy. In this letter, he described the ruination of the country under British rule and gave notice of his attention to launch a civil disobedience because he himself was a lawyer. On one hand, he first informed, he gave a notice, and then on the other hand, he inspired the people and mobilized the people. And without breaking law, he expressed the resentment. Why he has undertaken march? He could as well have gone by any vehicle, car or any bus, but he took to walk because on the way he mobilized many people joined the Dandi March and that became a mass march. Before commencing on March, he addressed the historic letter, as I told you, as the most iniquitous of all from the poor man's standpoint, because salt, salt is the very basic thing. Just with rice, water, and salt, the poor people can survive. Do you know that salary was from the selenium? That is for the salary, is salt. So apart from grains, food grains, a part of wages to the peasant people, the workers, used to be in the shape of salt. So that in the later years, that became salary. In fact, salary became from the word salt. So that was the importance of the food, not only for Indians, for any living being. Because without salt, there cannot be any uh, taste added to the salt. So uh, the British came down. The British came down and they have removed the uh, tax for momentarily. Of course, Indian government later we have tax also on every aspect. The three mass movements that can be reckoned with Mahatma Gandhi during that period as a, uh, as they gain independence for the country, he launched three major movements. They are non-cooperation, then civil disobedience movement in 1930, non-cooperation 1919, Quit India movement. Quit India, leave the country. You Britishers leave the country. That was the movement. Quit India movement in 1942. Gandhiji, in tune with the Indian environment, made use of traditional and modern mass media to inform and educate the people. His theory is called ITM theory of communication. I stands for interpersonal communication. T stands for traditional medium of communication because kirtanas, bhajans, folk art forms, modern media, these are all called uh, traditional, uh, mm, other than radio and television or channels. And M, M stands for ITM, interpersonal, traditional, and M stands for mass communication. by gathering public meetings, addressing meetings, public meetings. Now the age of public relations. After all these stages passing through, now the age of after attaining independence. The fourth stage in the evolution of public relations is the age of public relations in the independent India after attaining the independence in the 1947. The era of publicity, which began in British India, had graduated into the age of public relations in independent India. British companies started as publicity, and now with the advent of after attaining freedom, it became public relations. With the coming of independence to the country, there was a completely new environment and new political institutions. Some of the features of the new environment were the emergence of the parliament and state legislatures elected for the first time on the basis of adult franchise. Adult franchise means voting. Whoever becomes adult, they will be voting. Earlier, there was no votes. Only a few people, affluent people, were given votes to elect in different countries. But in India, for the first time, first elections, because they wanted to elect the members of the parliament and also the state legislatures, the adult franchise, voting by the adults has been introduced, the voting system. Universal suffrage is also called. The adoption by the government of the industrial policy resolutions 1948, 1956, 1991. These are the three major landmark industrial policy resolutions, industrial policy. In the background of these factors, both government and business organizations had to adopt conscious and deliberate policies of public relations. It is from this period that PR practice in the modern sense of the term began in India. With the introduction of the new industrial policy, especially after passing 1948, 1956, which envisages economic liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Simply, we call it as LPG. During the regime of Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, during the finance ministership of Manmohan Singh. So in every country throughout the world, it was the situation. So India also adopted LPG. It opened the doors for free trade. It also opened the doors for every other innovation. It opened the door for free flow of communication across the countries throughout the world. The year 2012 saw the government of India allowing foreign direct FDIs into multi-brand retail. Indian public, of course, pros and cons are there. There are good things, there are bad things about the LPG and also foreign direct investment. That's a debate, different debate. But how public relations gained momentum with all these happenings, milestones, is our focus. Indian public relations is now in a phase of global public relations. That apart, the public sector undertakings, central public sector undertakings, state public enterprises, uh, of course, now privatization has come. There must be a global competition. Without the competition, the governmental agencies are becoming the white elephants, eating into the taxes and revenues of the people. Therefore, a healthy competition is needed. Therefore, the LPG has paved way for giving competition to the public sector undertakings. Now, look at the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So, for the first time in 1941, public relations was there. Shimla established a publicity board, and from then onwards, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, after the independence, it had made certain directives and delivering services to the people. The department works for the development of the film industry. They organizes research and training programs, conventional folk media, Directorate of Advertising and Visual Publicity, Directorate of Field Publicity, the media wing, the publications division, the films division, the registrar of newspapers to register the newspapers in India, Bureau of Outreach Communication, which is a merger of three organizations earlier existed, the Films Division, Photo Division, and of course the major being Press Information Bureau. This is the major news agency of the government of India and the state governments. All the media units act, these are all called Government of India media units. As public information disseminating agencies, they disseminate, dissemination means giving out, parting with information, and all public policies aimed at socio-economic development, public sector, public relations. So the first industrial policy resolution 1948, followed by the industrial policy resolution 1956. Of course, I told you 1991 paved way for the growth, establishment, and growth of central public sector enterprises, and that paved the way for appointment of public relations wing, public relations manager, public relations practitioners for each public sector undertaking, so that they give out the information to the public, targeted public, connected public, the stakeholders, and also take feedback from them so that the organizations alter their services, alter their products, alter their ideas. And then another landmark that gave scope for public relations in India was nationalization of banks. Earlier, banks used to have only marketing managers. Though with the advent of emergence of PR during the regime of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, she has nationalized all the banks. Earlier, they were in the private sector. The main purpose of the nationalization of banks was those existing private banks at that point of time, they never used to give loans to any poor people. They have never gone into the rural areas. They denied loans to the agriculturists, that is farmers. They used to give only money to the affluent few rich people so that recovery becomes easy. But Indira Gandhi, Garibi Hatao, Garibi Bachao, with that slogan, because India was still, even till from 1947 till 1975, till the date of emergency, she found that something economic reforms must be there. And as part of economic reforms, she has nationalized the 19 then existing private banks, nationalized them, and they have and they it was a direction to them that they should establish banks in the rural areas, and compulsorily this percent of your loaning shall be for rural areas and agriculture sector. That gave rise for public relations. So the public relations practitioners, public relations managers attached to the banks, they are supposed to tell the farmers and the non-farm sectors that this much of amount, this is the loan, this is the interest, you can avail, you can pledge this property. Without pledging, you can crop can be pledged against the loan. So these are all the information about the loaning information, funding information. Sometimes grant also government matched along with the loans. And then general elections in 1952 paved way for political public relations. And then in 1958, Public Relations Society of India, a national association of public relations professionals in the country, has been established in Calcutta, and from there it is shifted to Bombay. And the two circles then existing from Bombay and Calcutta were merged together in 1968, and it has become a national professional organization. Today, I am the Secretary General at the national level, and Dr. Ajit Pathak is national president. It has 4 regional vice presidents, and each and every important city will have a chapter. For example, Hyderabad, we have a chapter called Public Relations Society of India, Hyderabad chapter, for which Dr. Venugopal Reddy, PRO of Ambedkar University, is the current chairman of the chapter. So now look at the 1991 policy, like 1948, 1956. 1991 industrial policy with the LPG played a greater role. And now we have gone to the global public relations, because every news agency has a newspaper here. They are called upcountry newspapers. And every country has its own establishment in India. And Indian companies are also operating in other countries like America, USA, Japan, and Western countries, Islamic countries, and African countries. Now, all these happenings, all this globalization has led to the strengthening of public relations practice, public relations profession as such. Therefore, independent India saw a new concept came into play, and it can be said that India is in the line with the most modern techniques of global PR. In fact, the concept of publicity introduced by India, British India, had graduated into PR in the independent India. This is what we should understand. All these policies, all these milestones paved the way for development, advancement, refinement of public relations practice. If you look at the glossary, globalization is one thing. Publicity boards, you should recall what were the edicts, what is public information, what is communication. And my advice is to you, you look at the model examinations, the full questions and the half questions. The 40-line answers and 20 lines, 10 marks question and 6 marks questions. You try to find the answers within the unit, that is, unit is called within the lesson, and then it becomes easy for you to attempt the examination. Attempting the examinations and getting the pass marks is not important. Try to understand the subject, that is more important. With this, I conclude this unit, that is lesson number 4 here. Tomorrow, let us resume. Let us try to conclude, cover at least 2, if not at least 1 or 1.5, and we'll carry the remaining things to the next Saturday. Thank you, Open University. Thank you, my dear participant. Thanks a lot. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.